Hey everyone, welcome to Good Enough University. My name is Sandra Jarvis and I am a certified professional coach as well as the author of Severed, a memoir of hope and healing. You are listening to Good Enough University's Wednesday Wisdom, which is a fairly new program that I've been doing in this group. And I decided to do it as a way to share more information and more tools with all of you so that this group could live up to its name as a university. So thank you for being here today. If you're here, tell us your name and where you're tuning in from, and hopefully I'll be able to see it. Sometimes my comments take a while to come through, but I love to know that I am not the only one here and that there are other people listening in whenever I'm talking online. So tell us your name, tell us where you're from, and in the meantime, I am going to jump in. So I've actually been away from social media quite a bit in the past month or so. I have had a couple of vacations with friends and family, and also a couple of trips for business. One of them was a writing retreat. I went up to the Puget Sound area and started on my next book. So I'm really excited about that. And now I'm back and I am ready to get going on getting this group up and running and interacting so that we can be a support for each other, because that's why I created this group. I wanted women who are struggling with feeling like they are enough to have a place they could turn and be validated and supported. And so I hope that that is what this group will become. Now, I'm just checking to see if I have any comments but alas, I have no comments. And I never know if that's because you're not commenting or if it's because it hasn't shown up, because sometimes it takes my computer quite a while. But so I'm just going to jump into the topic for today. So today I want to talk to you about facing problems and creating solutions with confidence. And specifically, I'm going to address 5 questions that you can ask yourself when you are seeking for solutions. Questions that can help you to get clarity on the actual problem that you're dealing with, as well as raise your energy so that you can actually find solutions to your problem. And then I had yesterday, when this was supposed to be happening, I had put something in the group asking for specific questions, if there was anything you wanted me to talk about specifically. And I got a couple of questions, so at the end I'm going to address those questions. So to preface all of this, I just want to do a quick refresher on judgment, because really understanding judgment and how that plays into our lives is really important in understanding most of the concepts that I teach. And so I want you to remember that judgment is a determination between good and bad. It is the meaning that we attach to the circumstances of our lives. And so it's full of opinion, of perspective, of discernment. It can be an estimate or a conclusion that we draw in our minds. So the thing that is the most important to remember about judgment is that it is not a fact. It shows up as sentences in your brain that you usually just consider your thoughts. But the thing is that your thoughts have incredible power, because your judgments, whether you voice them or not, they create your energy. They determine whether you're going to have higher, lighter, more anabolic energy, or heavier, more destructive catabolic energy. And so when you understand this concept, you start to have a lot more power over your problems and the solutions, because you have more power over your life. So today I want to introduce you to the idea that your thoughts, which are really your judgments, create your emotions, which lead to your actions, and it is your actions that determine the results that you get in your life. And when you think about it, that really is just common sense, because there are circumstances of life all around us, and your brain automatically assigns meaning to those circumstances, which show up as thoughts or judgments in your head. And those thoughts or judgments then create emotions that drive you to action or drive you to inaction. And then it's those actions that determine the results that you're going to get in your life every single day. And that's a really important concept to understand. But what does it have to do with problem solving? Well, I'm going to tell you today that it has everything to do with problem solving. Because when we understand this concept, then we have all the power to change. If you understand that your judgments create energy, then the next thing that I'm going to tell you is not going to come as a surprise. So, hey, all of the comments that you've been making just popped up on my screen. So welcome, everyone. Welcome, Susan and Melanie and Trina. I'm excited that you are here. So if you have any questions or comments while I'm talking, please throw them in the comments and I will try to address them. So here is what I want to tell you. When you have a problem, it is created by your judgments of the circumstance at hand. So circumstances happen and we have thoughts about them, we create judgments about them in our minds, and it is those judgments that end up creating our problems. And in order to create a solution to that problem, you first have to get out of the energy that created the problem, because problems and solutions are not found within the same energy. Problems are created in very low catabolic energy, and solutions are created in high or anabolic energy. So you're never going to solve a problem by staying in the same energy where you found it. It's just not possible. To discover the answers or the solutions that you're going to need, you're going to have to change your thoughts or your judgments, which will change your emotions or your energy, and that will allow you to take new actions towards solving your problem. So if you have any questions about that, then put your comments there in the comments, because I want to make sure that you understand this. But here's the amazing thing. Sometimes you don't even have to take action in order to get rid of your problems, at least not physical action, because our thoughts and our judgments are so powerful that sometimes you can actually get rid of your problems, the things that you're struggling with, simply by changing the way that you think. So it's an incredible way to live your life when you recognize that you actually can change your life by changing the way that you think. So most of us allow our thoughts to just be kind of thrown on us, and we just accept them as what we have to think or believe. But the truth is that you can choose. You get to choose all of your thoughts and all of your beliefs. And if there is something that isn't working for you, you can get rid of it. So I want to give you an example of how this works. And I want to use the 5 questions that I talked about to introduce this, because I want you to recognize that you can actually ask yourself these questions when you're trying to figure out a problem, and it will help you get clarity on what the problem actually is, as well as give you confidence in creating a solution. So I am going to use, let me just check these questions. Susan says that judgments are so tricky. Yes, I really have to step back sometimes and realize that I'm making judgments. That is so true. And judgment, we tend to think of judgments as only being negative things, but really judgment is any time we're making a determination, or anytime we are having an opinion, or anytime that we perceive something. Judgments they color everything in our lives. It's like the glasses that you're looking through. And so changing your judgments, changing the way that you look at something definitely can change a perceived problem. So I'm going to use a client that I was recently coaching, and I'm going to show you how I walked her through these questions so that you can see how it works. So I was recently coaching someone who was really struggling because she wanted the approval of her mother-in-law. But no matter what she tried, no matter what she did, she never got that approval. And when she came to me, she was extremely frustrated, and she did not know what else she could possibly do to get her mother-in-law to like her. And she said, it's going to be a really long life if I have to deal with this woman who hates me forever. So as we talked, I started asking her the 5 questions that I want to introduce to you today. And I want you to recognize that these are really powerful questions that you can ask yourself when you have a problem to get more clarity and more confidence. So the first question is, what specifically are you trying to accomplish? And this question is the most important question because we often jump into problem-solving mode without really understanding what the problem is. And in fact, I would say that that happens with my clients more often than not. They come to me and they present a problem, but the problem is not really what they presented. That's just a symptom. It's just something that came from the problem. And so what specifically are you trying to accomplish can give you a lot of clarity when you are trying to solve your problem. And in this case, she initially believed that the problem was that her mother-in-law didn't approve of her and that she needed to do something to change herself so that she could gain approval. And so I asked her the next question, which is this something that you can actually accomplish? And when I first asked my client this question, she was kind of confused because the entire reason that she came to me was to figure out how she could get the approval of her mother-in-law. And so the thing I want you to recognize is that in this case, the problem with that goal was that it's impossible to change anyone but ourselves. And so what she wanted was for her mother-in-law to approve of her, but that was not something she could control. And the fact is that her mother-in-law may hate her for the rest of her life, no matter what she does. And so what we came to understand was that my client had already proven that nothing she did could change her mother-in-law. I mean, she told me right off the bat that she had tried over and over and done a ton of things. So since she doesn't have control over the way her mother-in-law thinks or feels or acts, we were able to determine that her stated goal, the thing that she said she was trying to accomplish, was actually the thing that was a problem, right? Because the problem was she was trying to change her mother-in-law. So I went back to question number 1, and I asked her, what specifically are you trying to accomplish? What are you really trying to accomplish? And what is within your control in this situation? Because here's the thing, quite often we are trying to solve problems that aren't ours to solve. Gaining the approval of her mother-in-law was completely out of her control. She was never going to accomplish that goal unless her mother-in-law decided to give that approval freely. So the problem was not with her mother-in-law. The problem had to be something that was within her control. And after thinking about it for a while, my client realized that the real problem was the way that she personally felt about her relationship with her mother-in-law. She felt judged and inferior and less than anytime she was around her. And so she decided that the thing she needed to accomplish was to be able to feel confident in the presence of her mother-in-law, no matter how her mother-in-law felt about her. And we recognized together that that was not going to be an easy feat. But then when I asked her the second thing again, Is this something you can actually accomplish? She said yes, because that was a goal that was completely in her control. And we knew that because we know that your thoughts and your emotions and your actions are completely in your control. So although she didn't have the control over her mother-in-law, she does have the control of how she thinks and feels about herself. So that was awesome. So now we had the real problem. The problem was the way that she felt about herself in the presence of her mother-in-law. So the next question I asked her was, why is it important for you to find a solution to this problem? And in this case, my client had a lot of answers for this question. She loves her husband and she wants a good relationship with his family. She's sick of feeling so conflicted about going to family activities. She doesn't want her relationship with the in-laws to affect her children. And there were other things as well. But that was good, because whenever you have the motivation for solving your problems, then you are much more likely to be able to find a solution. So the more motivation you can come up with to find a problem, the more quickly and more easily you will be able to find a solution. So the next question that I asked her was able to give her some clarity in what was really going on in the situation. And that was, when you think about this problem, what comes to mind? And what I was really asking her then was, what are your judgments that are involved in this problem? And this can be a difficult question because we don't always like looking at our own judgments. And sometimes it can be really hard to see ourselves in a judgmental light. But I want to emphasize the importance of being completely honest with yourself when you're answering this question. Because if you're not honest about your own personal judgments in the situation, then you're never going to come up with a solution. It goes back to that idea that I talked about earlier, that you can't find the solution to a problem in the same energy that created it. So in order to really get a solution, you're going to have to look at your judgments so you can decide whether or not those judgments are things that are necessary. Okay. So let me just look at the comments really quickly. Yes, it is a paradigm shift, Melanie. It so much is a paradigm shift. So that's a really great thing to recognize. And yes, Melanie, CTFAR. Yes, you've done the program, so you know this. So once, let me see, Melanie, once you can recognize what the actual problem or challenge is, am I right? So yes, you want to get these, you want to use CTFAR once you realize what the actual problem is. I think that's what you're asking. If not, then reword it and ask me again. Okay, so this this question, when you think about the problem, what comes to mind, or what are the judgments involved with your problem? This can be difficult because we don't like looking at our judgments, but I want you to always take this question really seriously. And after my client looked at the situation and we kind of muddled through a few things that that she came up with, what we ended up coming to was that her judgment was that her mother-in-law should like her, that her mother-in-law should not judge her, that she should actually support her son's choice in a partner, and that she shouldn't expect her to change. Those were her judgments of the situation. And it's always interesting to me when the answers to this question are filled with the word should, because that is an indication that we are expecting something from other people or from ourselves, because it's just what we think is normal. But if that's the case, then it applies to all of us, right? If we should do something because of society, because it's the normal thing to do, then that means we all have to do it, or we all should be doing it. So I asked her to take a look at these things, these judgments, and turn them around. I wanted her to look at, well, if she expected her mother-in-law to do these things, then should she be expecting herself to do them as well? So she said, my mother-in-law should like me. So turn that around and it's, I should like my mother-in-law. But she doesn't particularly like her right now. And if she believes that her mother-in-law shouldn't judge her, then she has to ask herself, am I judging my mother-in-law? Which she is very much. And if she's saying that her mother-in-law should support her husband's love of his family, or her mother-in-law should support her husband's choice in a spouse, then to turn that around, she would say, then I should support my husband's love of his family, right? And if her mother-in-law shouldn't expect her to change, then she shouldn't expect her mother-in-law to change. So when you look at things like that, when you take should statements and apply them to yourself, it really starts to give you clarity about the things that you are expecting of other people. If you're expecting someone else to do it, if they should do it, then you better be prepared to feel like you should do it as well. And when I pointed this out to her, she had some major aha moments because she was expecting things of her mother-in-law that she is not willing to do herself. And that was pretty interesting, right? So after we established this pattern, then I was able to ask her this question. What is a different thought that you can have about this problem? What are different judgments that you can make about this problem? And this may take you some time to come up with, because when you're used to looking at a problem through a specific lens, it can be difficult to then completely change that lens and come up with another way to look at it. We usually think that we're right. When we have a problem and we're judging it, we believe that our perspective is the right perspective. And so to find a new perspective can be a challenge. And it took some time for my client to come up with new thoughts where her mother-in-law was concerned. But this is what she decided. She decided that, excuse me, that the way her mother-in-law had chosen to feel about her, about my client, was really none of her business. And it was okay for her to not like her, because my client could still like herself. She could still believe that she was okay exactly the way she is today, even if her mother-in-law doesn't like her. And she could still love herself, and she could still love her husband without the approval of her mother-in-law. And so turning that around and being able to think about that as, okay, I can't change my mother-in-law. I can't change what other people feel or think about me. All I can change is the way I am thinking. Well, then how do you get rid of the problem? What can you change? What she could change was the way that she was looking at it, the way that she was looking at her mother-in-law's opinions, and deciding that they were none of her business and that she could still believe that she was a good person in spite of her mother-in-law was exactly what she needed to be able to change this situation. Because in the end, the only thing she really needed to change was the way that she was thinking about the circumstance. She simply has to believe that she is good enough. Now, I say that as if that's an easy thing. And we all know that it's not, because that is the exact reason that this group exists, right? But I want you to recognize that you get to choose whether or not you believe you're good enough. You get to decide whether or not you're going to be okay with yourself. And sometimes the hardest part of changing is allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to believe that you're okay. Why is that so hard? Why is that so hard for all of us to just let go of the belief that we're not okay? I think it's really important to recognize that you have that control. You can choose to decide that you're going to believe that you're okay. You can choose to decide that you love yourself. And just checking here. Yes, Kayla says, don't shit on yourself. And I love that. Yeah, we often want the easy solution to our problems, which includes placing the blame or burden on others. That's exactly right, Melanie. And that's what we do. And the thing is when we choose to think that we're not okay, that's exactly what we're doing. We're placing the blame on something that we have no control over. We're saying, I'm not okay. I'm not a good person. And that's just how it is. And so I can blame that on that thing, and then I don't have to take responsibility for it. And that means that you're just going to live miserably for the rest of your life. And so I want to challenge that thinking, and I want you to start recognizing that you get to choose whether or not you believe that you are okay. Okay, so my client came up with this new idea, or this new thought that she was going to have, right? She is going to believe that her mother-in-law can think whatever she wants to, and that she is okay, that she is fine just the way she is. So then I asked her the second part of this question, which is, how does the new thought make you feel? And my client was able to recognize that when she believes that she is okay with herself and that it doesn't matter what her mother-in-law thinks, then she has a lot more peace in her life. And she felt like she was going to be able to move forward and let the whole thing go. Now, I want you to recognize that that is not going to happen overnight. That is something that my client is going to be working on for quite a while. But by creating a new thought intentionally and deciding intentionally what she is going to believe, now she is armed with something that can counteract those negative thoughts and those negative feelings towards her mother-in-law. When those come, she can say, I'm not believing that anymore. And she can put them aside and put on the new thought. Thoughts are kind of like trying on clothes. You can try on a new thought, and if it doesn't work, you can throw it out and try on another new thought. And when you find a thought that works, that makes you feel good, then you can keep it and you can bring it back over and over and over again. Okay? So once you find a thought that makes you feel the way that you want to feel, then the last question you're going to ask yourself is, what needs to be addressed, or what do you need to do for you to feel like this problem has been resolved? Okay, so for my client, she felt like the problem was resolved simply by changing her thoughts, because she had already recognized that she couldn't change her mother-in-law and there was nothing else she could do. And so it's what I mentioned earlier, that sometimes your problem is solved simply by changing your thoughts, simply by changing your judgments. And that's why your thoughts and your judgments are so powerful. But in other cases, you may need to address this question. You may need to decide what are the actions that you're going to take in order to resolve the problem. All right. So maybe my client could have wanted to say she needed to discuss the new way of thinking with her husband, or maybe she needed to confront her mother-in-law and let her know that she didn't appreciate the way that she was being treated in order to get closure. Or maybe she needed to implement some self-care so that she felt more loved and appreciated. Any of those things could have been actions that she could take to resolve the problem. But in this case, for her, just changing her thinking held all the power. All right, so I want to recap those questions for you. Okay. So number one is specifically what are you trying to accomplish? Okay. And 1A is it something that you actually can accomplish? So that's really one question. What specifically are you trying to accomplish? And is it something you actually can accomplish? And once you know that your stated goal in this case is something you can accomplish, then you ask yourself number two. And number two is, why is it important for you to find a solution to this problem? Remember, it's important to ask yourself that because you need motivation in order to work your way through this, okay? Question number three then is, when you think about the problem, what comes to mind? Or in other words, what are the judgments that are involved in your problem? And then question number four, once you understand the thoughts, is how, or what is a different thought that you can have about the problem? What's a different judgment that you can make about this problem? And how does that new thought or judgment make you feel? Okay. And then question number five, what needs to be addressed, or what do you need to do in order to feel like the problem has been resolved? And once you've answered these questions, you can make an action plan to move forward with your solution. So why does this work? Well, probably the biggest reason is that it gives you clarity about what the problem really is. So often when we're trying to solve problems, we're trying to solve problems that aren't really ours to solve. And when we stop and recognize that the only problems we can actually solve are the ones that involve what we can realistically change, then it lightens our load considerably, and it allows you to have confidence because you're working on things you can actually change. Okay? So recognize up front that the most important part of this process is figuring out a problem that is actually yours to change. You cannot change other people. You can't change their thoughts. You can't change their feelings. You can't change their actions. You can only change you. And so as you work through these questions, and if you get stuck on any of them, then look at the original stated goal and see if it is actually something you can change. Okay, so if you have any questions about this, then throw them in the comments right now. And let me look here. Melanie said, grace is one of the most challenging principles to accept and understand, both from a gospel perspective and allowing grace for ourselves. We think we have to work to be worthy of anything, and sometimes it's just a gift. Exactly. I absolutely love the way that you put that, and it is so true. And actually, that is the topic of the book that I just started at my writing retreat. And so I'm excited to talk more about that as I go forward. And yes, Melanie, I am going to post this again. I'm actually starting a curriculum section on my website, and I am going to be posting all of these videos in that curriculum section so that you'll be able to watch them whenever you want to. So, excuse me. Let's see. Kayla, it would be easier if other people would do your coaching and also realize that they can only change themselves too. It's true. It would be great if everybody in the world would understand these concepts. And so it's your job to send people my way, because then I can teach them, right? So invite your friends to this group, and if you have done coaching with me, you can recommend my programs, but it is easier to work with other people who understand this, but it's not impossible to do it when you're working with people who don't understand it. And I can testify to that because my own family initially did not understand it. And I gently and lovingly taught them a little bit here and there until they started asking questions. And when they saw the changes in me, then they wanted to understand it more, and they wanted to start applying it. So there is power in example. So, okay, let's see. Yes, could you? Yes, I can coach the world, and you can start a campaign. So you guys should take care of that. Let me know when you have it going, and I'll be there. So the last thing I want to do is to address the 2 questions that were asked yesterday. And one of these came from Kayla, who's here today. And I'm going to start with hers. She says, I've been feeling underappreciated. I know that I'm not underappreciated, but I've been feeling that way. So I guess in relation to confidence, how do you feel confident in yourself and the things you're doing without outside approval or recognition? So I think this is an awesome question. And I want to say, first of all, that it's pretty normal to feel underappreciated, and especially in the situation that Kayla is in. Kayla's the mother of 4 young kids, with the oldest one being 6, and her youngest is only 6 months. And that is a difficult stage to be in. So I want you to recognize, first of all, that you're normal, because anyone with 4 children under the age of 6 and one who's 6 months would probably be feeling underappreciated. And that's a pretty normal part of motherhood, period, especially when your kids are young. But even as they get older, you are in for a long life of feeling underappreciated. So I want you to recognize that. And that's not to be discouraging. It's because I want you to recognize that that feeling is just part of life. It's part of the 50-50 that we all signed up for. So sometimes you're going to feel awesome about life, and sometimes you're going to feel underappreciated. And can you do anything about it? Well, yeah, there are tools that you can use in order to change those feelings, but you are normal. There's nothing wrong with you that is making you feel underappreciated. So I just want you to recognize that first off. But then I want you to recognize that your problem here is coming from your feelings. You feel underappreciated. And what we know about feelings is that they are created by your thoughts. So I would ask you, what are you thinking that is making you feel underappreciated? And I don't know, but I can throw out some ideas. Maybe you believe that other people should be recognizing your efforts more. Or maybe you think that people should show more gratitude for the things you're doing. Or maybe you think that your family should cooperate more readily. So what I want you to recognize is that all of those statements were should statements, right? And we're not going to should on ourselves, because that's never helpful. But what you're doing is that your underappreciation, if those feelings or thoughts are things that you're thinking, you are expecting something from someone else, and you can't control them. You can't make your family recognize your efforts more. You can't make them show gratitude. You can't make them cooperate. All you can do is change yourself. And those types of thoughts are only going to make you feel underappreciated, because you're expecting something you're not getting. And so recognize right up front that if your thoughts are things that you're expecting of someone else, then that's your problem, because you can only change you. You cannot change them, even if you want to change them. And because you're a family and you live with them, you feel like you should be able to change them, especially because you're their mother, right? But it's that free will thing. And we don't get to change other people, even the ones that we created. So whoever came up with that idea was obviously not a mother, right? But that's the truth. We don't get to change them. So what can you change? What do you have control over? You can use the questions that I just introduced and see what you come up with. Because can you change your thoughts? Can you try to figure out exactly what the thought or the expectation is that's creating that feeling of underappreciation, and start there? And then see if you can come up with a more empowering thought that will create feelings of self-love and gratitude. and things that will help you feel more appreciated. But the truth is, the appreciation of other people will never be as empowering as the love and appreciation that you give yourself. And so, what I want you to think about is that quite possibly this is about your own approval of yourself, because otherwise you wouldn't be feeling that way. If you fully appreciated yourself and everything that you are doing, then you wouldn't care whether your family appreciated you or not. And honestly, you're pretty awesome. So I want you to recognize that quite possibly the feeling of underappreciation is coming from within you. And so think about that. Now, Kayla is a member of my Good Enough You monthly subscription program. And so, Kayla, I'm going to tell you that if you want to talk about this more, you can set up an individual call and we can discuss this and give you more tools for overcoming your feelings of underappreciation. Okay, so I hope that helped you some. The second question is from Melanie, and Melanie's also here today. So Melanie said, self-motivation and keeping momentum going if I have a circumstance arise that distracts me or takes my focus for a short time. I find it hard to either maintain momentum or step back into focus once the distracting situation is finished. An example is my work through your course. I was fully dedicated to daily work on it, but then I chose to go out of town to help a family member. I struggled to continue coursework in the different situation, and now I'm finding it hard to get motivated again, struggling to reestablish my mindset. This has always been a struggle for me, continual, consistent motivation. And this struggle definitely causes me to lose confidence in myself. All right. Okay, so Melanie, I think this is a struggle that many of us have. We get going on something and the newness of that thing gives us the momentum that we need to keep going. But unfortunately, things don't stay new forever, right? And it's really normal to lose motivation after the newness wears off. And especially if you interrupt your regular routine and you're traveling and you're doing other things. So I want you to, again, recognize that you're normal. You're not alone. If we all had self-motivation figured out, then there would be a whole lot less problems in the world, right? Because we'd all just get done what we say we're going to do, and it would be awesome. So what can you do about it? Well, I think, and you actually said this in your question, I think that motivation problems are generally mindset problems. And what that comes from is that when things start to feel hard or monotonous or whatever, then the part of your brain that's hardwired to protect you kicks in. And it's like, yeah, that's okay. You don't have to do anything that's hard or anything that you don't want to do. And because your brain is there to keep you safe, it's like, yeah, just take a rest. You can just sit back and do nothing until you're good and ready to start again, right? That's what our brains tell us. They say, yeah, it's okay. If it's getting hard, then just lay off for a while. So I'm assuming that others of you have had that kind of thought, right? Okay, if you have, throw some hearts out there for me to see, because I think that this is what happens to all of us, and this is why people have a hard time with motivation. And what I want you to recognize is that it is your brain that is betraying you. And I'm serious when I say that, because your brain is telling you that you can't do hard things. But Melanie, I would ask you this specifically. Do you have evidence in your life that you can do hard things? I want you to look back over your life and I want you to find evidence that supports the fact that you can do whatever you need to do to make it through difficult things. And then I want to use that mindset to get yourself moving again. Because think about it, you have made it this far in life. I don't know exactly how old you are, but you've made it a long ways in life. And my guess is that you've dealt with some pretty big challenges, because we all have. And when those challenges came up, it was your brain that got you through, because that's what it's hardwired to do. It got you through doing hard things and keeping you safe when there were challenges to face. But here's the thing, when your brain is not feeling threatened, it is harder to get it moving. It's harder to get it to do things because it doesn't feel like it has to keep you safe. So consider that for a minute. Right now, there's nothing pressing you to get the program done. So your brain is saying, you can do it later. You can do it when you're ready. You can do it when you get motivated. But you have the power to do whatever you want to do. You can choose to take charge of your brain and get it going again. And there are a lot of ways to do that. But I want you to recognize that you do get to choose to do that. And whenever you choose to do that, you're going to get a pretty big hit of confidence, because momentum helps to build confidence. And so part of getting going again is simply forcing yourself to get going again. There are always going to be days where you wake up and you don't want to do it. There are always going to be times in your life, whether it's this situation or another situation, where your brain is telling you that it's okay to be lazy. And you can listen to your brain and you can do nothing, or you can say, you know what? I'm not going to allow you to betray me right now. I am going to take charge and I am going to do the hard thing, because that's what I want in order to get the results that I want in my life. So remember how committed you were when you joined my group. Remember how committed you were when you started that program. And then use that feeling to get yourself moving again. Now, it's not necessarily going to be easy, but easy is not what this life is about. And in order to get the things that we really want out of life, we have to do hard things. And that's all there is to it. Again, it's the 50-50. There's the things that make you feel good and the things that make you feel bad, and everything in between. And you get to choose how you're going to use those things. So Melanie, you are part of the group as well. And I would encourage you to make a one-on-one appointment with me too, because we can work on getting your momentum going again. And we can help you figure out what you need to be thinking in order to get your brain to quit betraying you. Okay? Okay, so I just want to check the comments here. Kayla is pretty funny. Okay. Yes, so Melanie, I'm glad I hit it on the head for you. You're old. I'm old too, so we're in that together. Yes, so again, yes, I hope this is the jumpstart you need to get going again. I want you to try and remember why you wanted this a few weeks ago and remind yourself of that. But I really encourage you to make a one-on-one appointment with me. I haven't talked to you for a while, and it would be really good for us to coach through this, because you're paying for those appointments. You may as well use them. So, Susan, I saw you ask. Okay, let's see. Is this group open to anyone? The group is open to any woman who wants to join. It is called Good Enough You. It is on my website, sandrajarviscoaching.com. And so if you want more information about it, please head over to sandrajarviscoaching.com, and I would love to have you join. So if you have additional questions about that, you can send them to me through the contact form on my website. So thank you for being here. And I hope that this was helpful. And again, it will be posted tomorrow on my website in the curriculum section. And so you can watch it again and again. So, all right, have a fantastic week, and we will see you next week. Same, well, not the same time because today was a day late. Next week on Wednesday at noon, right here in the group. Thank you, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.